Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here, and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have something a little bit different. We actually have part one of what is a 3-part series all about the 6 steps to increasing the multiplier of your business. Now, we have part 1 here on the Deal Room Podcast, but if you want to listen to parts 2 and 3, then you will have to head over to our sister podcast of the Deal Room Podcast, which is called Talking Law. Now, in our show notes, we will provide some links straight through to Talking Law, where we will provide part 2 and part 3 of this 3-part series. But today, you are getting the first of the 3-part series in this 6 steps to increasing the multiplier of your business, where we really delve into talking about what the multiplier is of a business, why increasing the multiplier of a business can have an exponential impact on the value of a business. And we also delve into step 1 of our 6 steps in the 6 steps to increase the multiplier of your business. And in order to talk about this topic, we have on board Mark Johnston from Sherlaws Group and Nathan Williams from Customer Return. These guys are full of knowledge. I had an absolute blast recording this 3-part series with them as we really delved into a whole heap of case studies, as well as the ideas about the 6 steps in increasing the multiplier of a business. And we talk about some amazing results. One example is a business that moved from having a $200,000 valuation to an $11 million sale in 18 months. Doesn't that just blow your mind? I mean, any business owner would be very happy with that exponential growth in $200,000 as a valuation to $11 million 18 months later. So listen in if you want to hear which of the 6 steps in increasing the multiplier of your business led to that one. And I'll give you a hint, we actually don't talk about it in this part 1. So you have to listen on to part 2 and part 3 in Talking Law in order to get that one. And we have a number of other great examples like that. So look, buckle in, here we go. I think you'll enjoy these episodes. I certainly enjoyed recording them. Wonderful, Mark and Nathan. Firstly, I just wanted to say a very big thank you for joining us on the Deal Room Podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Brilliant. My absolute pleasure. I'm super excited about today, talking about increasing the multiplier of your business. But in just 6 steps. Love it. Absolutely love it. Every business owner I speak to, well, almost every business owner, wants to know how to increase the multiplier of their business, how to increase the value of their business. And maybe what we should do is take one step back and look at why we're talking about the multiplier. But before we do that, I'd just like you to each give a really quick overview of who you are and what you do, how you work with this. Nathan, over to you.
Thanks, Joe. So, long story short, I'm the owner and founder of a sales consulting business called Customer Return. And the 3 things we do are help people pitch their business, increase their sales capability, and also get a lot more repeat and referral business. So some of those things are obviously aligned to increasing valuations in a business by increasing things like conversion rates, ability to bring in new clients, and then once they've got those new clients, how to get those repeat and referral sales happening so they've got that reliable, stable, recurring revenue.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Nathan. And over to you, Mark. Maybe if you can give us a bit of a background.
Thanks, Joe. My name's Mark Johnston from Sherlaws. I'm one of the founders of the company. For the last 20 years, we've had the pleasure and honour of working with SME owners around the world to help them increase their share price and the valuation of their companies. And we've done that through a combination of intellectual property processes to increase the share price, and a delivery methodology around coaching, not consulting, so that we don't write big, thick reports and say good luck. We actually get in the trenches with them and help drive that share price growth. And we've had the honour of, as I said, creating about $7 billion worth of share price growth across our businesses. And our average growth is about 220% in the share price over an 18-month period.
So, sorry, repeat that. The average share price increase you've managed to achieve, did you say, is how much?
220%.
220% over 18 months. That's phenomenal.
Yes.
I absolutely love numbers like that, Mark. Okay, wonderful. So let's talk about it. So, of course, the topic today is 6 steps to increasing the multiplier of your business. But moving one step back for perhaps new listeners to the Deal Room podcast, what is the multiplier of a business? Why are we using this terminology? What is it that we're talking about at the moment?
Well, great question and a great baseline to start. So every SME has a share price, but when you talk to SME owners, they don't actually realise they have a share price, and they certainly don't know how to calculate it. And so the share price of the business is its enterprise value times the number of, divided by the number of shares. So when we talk about the value of a company, there are two parts that drive that valuation. One is the profit of the business, and one is then the multiplier. And so if you have a $3 million profit business, the average multiplier in most industries is 3. So that's where the term 3 times becomes part of the lexicon. So what we have with an SME owner, if you've got $3 million profit times 3, you've got a $9 million value business. The mistake that most SME owners make is they spend about 95% of their time trying to drive that profit. Increase revenues, which is of course important, manage costs, and we're taught as business owners to do that. So a lot of our time is driving revenue, managing costs. But what we haven't been taught and don't know how to spend our time doing is actually introduce things to drive the multiplier. So the 6 steps to increase your multiplier are designed to increase that multiplier from 3 to 5, because it's much more enjoyable for that small business owner and their advisors, their accountants, their lawyers and their financial advisors to actually have a strategy to drive that growth. And just as importantly, for people looking to acquire businesses, they actually want to see that there is upside once they've acquired that business. So if we take a typical SME that's got $3 million profit and a multiplier of 3, that's an enterprise value of $9 million. Our approach after 18 months is to increase that profit to 4 and then increase that multiplier from 3 to 5. So the value of the business is now 4 times 5 and now 20 million. That's where we're able to generate that 220% upside by getting the SME owners to actually work on the 6 components that drive that multiplier above the industry benchmark. By focusing on that, you're able to get fast compound growth. It's what's called a high growth stock on the stock market. What we need to get our SME owners thinking about is, how do I create a high growth share price growth strategy for my own business? Because that will create organic growth. And if you're looking to have your business transaction ready, as we call it, it will allow someone to see that you've actually got ways in which you can create compound growth, which makes your business much more valuable, and with the de-risking processes underlying that.
Absolutely love it. I absolutely love it for so many reasons. I think number one, this is such a good conversation to be having right now. So right now where we are, we probably won't publish this for a few weeks, but right now we're sitting in the midst of a pandemic, and businesses are being challenged. Many businesses are being challenged in terms of liquidity and business model as a whole. Is the business model that they have something that they will be able to see through after the crisis has ended? And, some businesses that have fared well still have a crisis in relation to business model, in relation to their ability to have scaled up when the opportunity has been there. So I think there's so many reasons why this discussion that we're having today is massively pertinent, because businesses, perhaps more than ever, have now the requirement or the need to step back and really have a bit of a think about their model. And whilst profit may have seeped out the door, particularly for many industries, if we're able to work on the multiplier, then when the profit comes back, then that potentially gives businesses the opportunity for exponential growth out of this period. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. When we have a thing like COVID, it's just like the GFC 12 years ago. It's essentially a black swan event when the tide goes out. And, when we look at businesses, what accountants, lawyers and advisors will often say is, in a boom period, a lot of businesses can make money. But when there's a stress test in the market, that's when the tide goes out and good businesses come to the fore.
Yeah.
And potentially business models that haven't been fully aligned and ready for scale get tested and found out. So the opportunity is in this downtime, rather than playing the victim and thinking, well, the market's it is what it is. What smart business owners are doing is actually saying, now's the time to do that strategic activity to increase the multiplier for that exact reason, so that when the market does come back, as you said, that every dollar of profit is more valuable. Because if you think about it with the balance sheet, if you have a transactional dollar of revenue, it's worth one on a balance sheet. Whereas if you have recurring revenue on your profit and loss, it's worth 3 times on the balance sheet. So changing the product mix, opening distribution channels, also addressing some of what we call the one-woods, which are those products in the business or those things that are in your business that have served you historically, but you're only continuing to use them because of ego, or it's just what you've been doing. So it's a really good point to reassess the business and think, how is the market going to be buying in the next 5 to 10 years? Where is the most value going to be? And how do I redeploy our scarce resources? Because we do have a lot of SMEs have those scarce resources, so it's even more important. How do we deploy those resources into that high value recurring revenue streams, as opposed to the historical thing that got us there? That's why we call it the one wood. It's like the golf analogy. A lot of us hit the one wood because we've always been taught to do that, but it's often costing us strokes or costing us other opportunities in our business. So thinking about your business differently, as you said.
I'm glad you explained the analogy, I've got to say, Mark, because not being an avid golfer myself, although I have known to have a swing, but got it. Okay, it's a golfing analogy. All right, I'm with you now.
And just on that, Joe, to Mark's point, what I'm seeing a lot of clients reassessing now is, with this new normal, I'll call it, moving forward, what have they done historically in terms of services or programs that maybe aren't as profitable as others? And where are the markets that have served them best that maybe won't serve them as well moving forward? So in very simplistic terms, what I'm finding a lot of businesses are asking now is, is my message going to be as relevant, or my pitch, if you will, is that going to be as relevant moving forward for this new market? Have I got the right services or products, or are there ones I need to pull back from and trim a little bit? And what's the means of communicating and delivering to that market, be it online, offline? Obviously, service delivery is going to change if you've got more of a service-based business, for some businesses. So it's looking at what's the message, who's the market, and what's the method of interacting with them. And in the last sort of, 2 months or so since, COVID has come in, I know this will go away sort of a couple of weeks down the track, but, an analogy I've heard a couple of times recently is, now people want the life raft, not the yacht. In other words, what do they need to keep moving forward that's maybe a slightly lower dollar value sale that keeps them in business, keeps the wheels churning, before they go back to maybe the dollar values of what they were selling before. So it's a different message. The market's got to be more finely tuned. And I find myself talking to a lot of clients about, who's a market that's well suited to what you've got, where you can solve a big problem for them, and they've also got some capacity to pay and to invest. That's a very practical approach, but that's what I find I'm having a lot of conversations around at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. All right, so let's go to the 6 steps then. What are the 6 steps? Maybe let's start with number 1. What's the first one?
The first step in moving the multiplier is talent, capability, and culture.
Talent, capability, and culture. What do you mean by that, Mark?
So the first way to increase the value of your share price over a competitor's is if you have a very strong culture. What that means is you've got higher retention of staff, therefore less risk in your delivery, greater corporate knowledge. You have much greater ability to attract quality staff and spend less on recruiting, because as an SME, we don't have often the opportunity to get the right match of folks into the business. So having that culture and that capability and talent actually increases your loyalty with your staff, and therefore you're more valuable than a like-for-like competitor who sells the same product.
And so, of course, you're talking about retention of the right people. But and of course, first you have to understand who the right people are, and I'm sure that's talent capability.
And part of that, it's a very important, it's a great question you've asked there, because we've never met a client that doesn't have a mission statement or a nice thing that says we're going to be good to the community, and it's normally an eagle soaring or some people rowing a boat and all those sorts of things, and these are our values. But they actually don't become, that's not culture. What culture is articulating why you're in business, what are the values you hold, defining what they mean, and then turning them into behaviours. So that when you're interviewing someone, because no one says on their CV they spent 6 months looking at Facebook, they did this, they did that. But when you meet someone, you can clearly tell whether they're a match for your business. So actually identifying behaviours, articulating them, and then comparing that to the people you meet will actually allow you to really laser in on getting that competency matrix right. Because it's not just about having the skills, it's about being the right fit. And it's the same whether it's an orchestra, sporting teams, management. People always talk about putting the band back together in business. What they're talking about is putting a management team or a leadership team that they know and trust and share the same values. So actually defining what your behaviours are and how you do that actually allows you to attract the right people, because you ultimately, as an SME, should be getting the majority of your staff from word of mouth from your suppliers, clients, and existing staff. If your existing staff aren't actively recruiting or saying positive things about you at the barbecue test, what that means is you don't have a strong culture. But if you have staff that say, it's a great place to work, come and join us, we're growing, that barbecue test saves you on recruiting fees, makes sure like-for-like people join the business, and you retain that culture. Because one of the key risks of scaling is how do we retain culture? So as soon as you've got those behaviours, what you've got is WD-40. Culture is either sand in your engine, or it's WD-40, making things move as quick, as seamlessly and frictionlessly as possible. So as soon as we get that culture right, what we've got is a much more, the business is more competitive. And the best example of that is Virgin. And Richard Branson has built 8 $1 billion companies from scratch, all on the promise of fun. Fun and irreverence. It's the customer base, it's the clients, the people who Virgin are fun people.
Yeah, it's a really good point Mark makes. I mean, I remember reading his biography many years ago now, but yeah, his sole premise and his guiding light, if you will, for setting up all those businesses was going in industries that were, in his words, fat, lazy, having a good time, a bit too happy and bloated, if you will, and coming up with a culture that was innovative, fun, obviously all about the customer, and being price competitive as well. So that was his sole premise, if you like, and the consistency through setting up all those businesses.
Yeah, and I love I've read the book as well, and I'm sure most of our listeners have too. And absolutely, that's an example of culture that I think many of us in business, aspire to create. But talking about it from a practical SME perspective, how do we, and I love your barbecue test. I love a good test that we can use. The barbecue test is very memorable. I'll be taking that away today. But what's some examples of how, you've talked about creating a culture and values that the staff understand. And, implicit in that is something that, continues to feed through that, staff actually feel, there's some integrity behind, not just words on a piece of paper, as so often is the case. But what are some other tips in relation to SMEs creating this culture in the environment that they're sitting in, always too many things to do and not enough time to do it in? What are some simple, easy ways to create this approach of talent, capability and culture?
Great question, Joanna. And you part of your question there hit the nail on the head. First is actually scheduling the time to do it. So making sure that you have culture days in the business scheduled so that you can continue to embed that in the business and those behaviours. So firstly, actually allocating the time, because culture drives the human capital of your business. You ask CEOs on podcasts or any CEO around the world, what's your most valuable asset? And they always say they're people. And the follow-up question should be, well, how much do you invest in those people? And if you're a corporate, you invest a lot because you've got the finances and the knowledge to do that. In the SME community, sometimes when, especially through COVID, things are a bit tight and sometimes it's one of the first line items to go. But it's actually more important to do it. So firstly, we have to schedule the time to do it, define those behaviours. So as a real life example, in our business at Sherlaws, for 20 years, one of our values is fair. And so what that means is all of our joint venture partners are 50-50. We don't do 51-49 deals because that would indicate a requirement for control, which means we don't trust them, which isn't fair, because a deal is perfect when both parties feel it's fair and it's energising. If you walk away feeling as though someone's taken advantage of you, at some point you give up. So when both parties feel it's fair, what we then are able to do is have that energy, which drives culture. And in our business, we don't have an annual leave form. So since we started in July 1999, we've never had an annual leave form. And what we say to our team members is, as long as you hit your commercial KPIs, take as much time as you need to look after yourself. Sometimes they take less, sometimes they take more, but not having that annual leave form, to your point around the piece of paper, is actually a material demonstration of our culture. Because if we had the piece of paper, people might not take as much time as they need. By not having it and not reporting it, it allows people to be empowered to make their own choices.
That is amazing. I love that, but that is brave. That is a brave step. Firstly, how many staff do you have?
When we launched that, we went from 8 to 88 staff in our first 3 years.
Wow.
So we managed that, and then we went to 243 in 08, just before the GFC, and then dropped back down to about 126 now. We've followed our own advice and restructured our multiplier, so we now license our IP, so we don't have as many internal staff. But that's we've still to this day we don't have a form. People still sort of smile at us when we say that, but when they join, they're like, okay, you literally don't have a form.
But when you say you don't have a form, presumably you also mean that you don't track it, as in you don't have any maximum number of days they can. Okay, have you got any jobs going? I'm on my way over to you. No, I'm kidding. I'm happy here. What am I saying? But it says, come
on, those 6 million billable units.
That's it. But that's got to do on the barbecue. We don't charge our clients photocopying, by the way, just a plug here. No, it sounds like you totally earned the barbecue test there. I love that. That would definitely get people talking.
And the other thing I'll add just quickly about culture, Joe, is, some people can hear that word and think it's, a bit abstract, a bit esoteric, but I mean, simply defined, it's the way a business does things around that business. And to make it more left brain, for want of a better term, I mean, there are really good stats and lots of good research to show that obviously the more energised and engaged employees are, the better the customer experience and the higher the profit of those businesses as well. There's a really good book I read many years ago called The Service Profit Chain, and it looks at employee engagement, customer experience, and what that means to the bottom line of a business. So, I think it's absolutely crucial, and it's often the starting point of delivering that great customer experience, which then flows through to more sales, high profit, and ultimately, to the theme of today, a high valuation as well.
Yeah, love it. Okay, and just one thing, implicit. I'm sorry, I keep coming back to the no limits on leave thing. I love it. It's very unique, but I guess implicit in that approach is that you must have very good ways of managing via numbers to be able to track performance, and so that employees themselves, are held to something other than hours and days.
Yeah, and to Nathan's point, on the left brain side of managing that, what we educate our consultants and coaches and folks within the business about is, what are the source-based KPIs, or what do they actually need to do as a carrot to ensure they hit the commercial returns, so that we've got the flexibility to do that. So understanding the structure and the amount of activity required to generate the result.
Yeah.
But having that outcome focus, and it's great to hear you're not only based, or 6 minute, as you know. So how our commercial model works is we don't have hourly rates, so we charge retainers and success fees. So what that allows us to do with our staff, our team internally, is we can manage them that way as well. So we're really clear around capacity and utilisation and those sorts of things. We do have that very much fine-tuned, but it's designed so that they can actually we can hit the numbers as if clients are happy as a company and our team are happy, the barbecue's good fun, right? So if key commercial deliverables gives that freedom, because no one wants to work till 8 p.m. on a Friday night. That's that's not fun.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. All right. Well, this is too interesting. We've only done step one. I hope our audience is enjoying this as much as I am and not minding that we're really getting deep into some of these areas. That's it for our first part of our 3-part series, all about the 6 steps to increasing the multiplier of your business. Now, because we get really deep into looking at business revenue streams and product ideas, we have the second and third part of this series over at our sister podcast, Talking Law. So if you're interested in hearing the next 2 episodes in this series, then you'll just have to head over to Talking Law in order to do that, because we won't be airing part 2 and part 3 of this series here on the Deal Room podcast. And if you want to find links to those episodes, then just head over to our show notes here in the Deal Room podcast for this episode, which was part 1, and we'll give you the links through to part 2 and part 3. Now, just as a bit of a teaser here, I really highly recommend you head over and have a bit of a listen to those other 2 episodes, because in those episodes, we talk about the case study of the business that moved from a $200,000 valuation to an $11 million sale in the space of 18 months. And I think that's just a fabulous example of how these 6 steps to increasing the multiplier of your business can play out in real life. So if you're interested in hearing that case study and that example, then just head over to Talking Law to listen to those next 2 episodes. But in the meantime, if you would like to reach out to Mark Johnston at Sherlaws Group or Nathan Williams at Customer Return, all you have to do is head to your show notes or over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com, where you'll be able to get the details of Mark and Nathan and link straight to them. And you'll also be able to download a transcript of this podcast episode if you are just dying to read it in more detail. There, you will also be able to find details of how to contact our lawyers at Aspect Legal if you or your clients would like to discuss any legal aspects of sales or acquisitions. We've got a range of services working with clients, both big and small, and we've got different services depending on size and complexity. So look, don't hesitate to book an appointment free with one of our legal eagles if you would like to talk about how we might be able to assist you or your clients. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for listening in to part 1 of our 2-part series. As I've said, if you want to listen to part 2 and part 3, then head over to our sister podcast, Talking Law. But in the meantime, thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Thank you and see you next time. Have you heard of Aspect Legal's partner program? Our partner program is a free program that's open to brokers, corporate advisors, accountants, and any other advisors to businesses who are dealing with organisations that are leading into a sale or acquisition of businesses or shares. As part of our partner program, we offer free access to our legal hotline, which is a support line to our specialist lawyers. We also provide a pre-free sale legal review to buyers and sellers, where we educate them about the process and timelines from a legal perspective. And the third element that forms part of this partner program is a match-up database that we run. where effectively we're able to connect up accountants or brokers or corporate advisors with businesses who are looking to either sell or acquire. So if you're a partner of ours, you go straight into that partner database, and where we can see opportunities to provide matchups, then we introduce you. And the final element of our partner program is ongoing education in the form of seminars, webinars, and meetups. And that's something new that we're introducing into the partner program in early 2020. So if you're not a partner, then all you need to do to become a partner is just pop us an email at partners@aspectlegal.com.au and just simply say in your subject column, I want to become a partner. It's as easy as that to get immediate access to our free legal hotline and all of those other resources. We look forward to having you on board as a partner.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room Podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.